Welcome to the Business Development Podcast, brought to you by the Global Business Development Association, delivering the strategies and tactics to boost your career and corporate growth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Global Business Development Association's podcast called What is Business Development? And today we have a fantastic guest. We have Ciaran McGuigan, and we're going to talk about his book. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Ciaran. Before the show, we were talking, and just a fascinating background. And, you know, he's an entrepreneur. He's an author, and he's published multiple books and multiple literature items in the field of sales and business development, negotiations. He's an expert in new business development strategies and tactics. He's a conference speaker and a motivational trainer. And he is one of Australia's most experienced executives in transforming sales teams and their results. His innovative and engaging seminars help executives all levels achieve the goals they are seeking. He's owner and director of several sales-related businesses based in Sydney, Australia, and Ciaran employs over 30 sales professionals working across the APAC region. And today we're going to talk about his book called Interruption Selling. Now, his first book, called The World's Best Sales Tips, that was published about 20 years ago. So here's the follow-up to that, and Interruption Selling. It's a back to basics sales skills for new business. And I have a copy of it here. Fantastic. I have it dog-eared, a lot of highlights. Ciaran, I got to tell you, I think I broke my book because I don't know that it's functional anymore with so many dog ears and highlights and notes that I took in the book. But for
That's
folks
fantastic.
that, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And, for folks that want to understand the book, for the past 20 years, the sales careers of an entire generation of salespeople have been formed and influenced with a permission-based philosophy and system. And in increasingly competitive and slowing markets, that kind of passive, soft approach is starting to fail and deliver the commercial outcomes required for business owners and managers, large and small. That passive method just is losing momentum. And so succeeding in new business development has always required tenacity, self-belief, and focus. And there are a lot of self-help books and resources available for those things. However, there's one keystone discipline which no one discusses, which will have a massive influence on your success or failure. It's the willingness and the ability to interrupt. And, interrupt and engage those prospects. Business owners, managers, and sales staff who have something of value and the ability to interrupt themselves and others, i.e., your prospects, will achieve their goals. And so this book positions and teaches this principle as the keystone philosophy to new business development and growth. So, Ciaran McGuigan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tony. And that was a very generous three-dimensional intro. Thank you so much. I just think that this was a story or a methodology that was burning inside me. I hadn't just put the words around what those key principles were and why there needed to be a change. And when I sat down and analyzed it and thought about what's going on with young salespeople or people entering the sales profession or business development, I sort of, when I boiled it down, this is what I came up with. This is and the reason I wrote it is as a platform for them to succeed on. Like there are plenty of books out there. There's no shortage of materials, but I was thinking if there had to be one how could I succinctly boil that down and distill that into one volume? And that's why I created it.
Yeah, I really love that origin story for the book itself. And you've been around for a while. You've been in this profession for a long time, and I mean that as a compliment. I know you chuckled there.
I've kissed a lot of frogs. Yeah.
You kissed a lot of frogs, and you've seen this movie before multiple
Yeah.
times. So, and it's interesting what you said about the generation today. And I'm not
Yes.
saying Gen X versus baby boomer or any of those things. It's just kind of how the industry has evolved. So let's kind of rewind a little bit and just talk people through, how did you start in business development?
Yeah. Well, by accident, as most people, not many people sit down and choose to be in sales as a career option. You come out of, if you can imagine, if you've got a young family and your kids come home and the dad says, "So what did you do at school today?" And they talk about, "Well, we talked about our careers, what we want to be when we grow up." And not many kids, and if they did, imagine if they said, "Oh yeah, I said when I grow up, I want to be a telemarketer, or I want to be a cold caller, or I want to be a salesperson." Most parents would look at them and say, "You can do better," or "What about being a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer?" They don't see it as a career. So the kids come out of university or college, the first job they get is in customer service, answering the phones and taking calls and being nice. And then somebody discovers that they can talk underwater, so to speak, and they're good at engaging with other human beings. And say, and then they witness, and this is what happened to me, then they witness other guys making 3-4 times as much money as they do, but the only difference is they're making outbound calls as opposed to inbound. Yeah, they're in the same office doing the same work. And so all you need is a belief within yourself that you could do the same thing. And then, what happens, you just start up and fail. So when I started off with, this is a long time ago, right? In a the computers didn't exist when I started, and we're on manual dial phones, just ringing through the phone book, cold calling. Your standard equipment was you had a script that had been photocopied and Xeroxed so many times that the letters had started, gluing into each other, and it had coffee cup stains on the corners of the page, and it just photocopied again. And that your script, you had the hardwired plastic telephone sitting on your desk, and you had an order pad which was in green, blue, and red that you had to hard write your sales into. And I started, I was terrible. I'm just sort of staggering along going, "Hello, my name is," what's my name again? And and just going through this, and everybody's hanging up on you and saying, "Nah, not interested, go away. Thanks very much." No. But then one day after a week or so, someone said, "Oh," and this was in Australia because I live in Australia, but I'm Irish. Someone said, "Oh, are you Irish?" And I went, "Yeah, but that's not on the script. I have to stick to the script." And before long, I started engaging with the person on the other side of the phone because their cousin's uncle's brother was from Galway or Dublin. And we started engaging and chatting. And that became my platform, if you like, where I could engage with a human being on the other side of the phone. And the sort of script went away. And by the by, somebody, you just says, the guy or the target or the prospect says, "So what's this call about?" And you just go, "Look, the reason for my call is," and thus then began the sales process. And I found it, relatively, once you get comfortable with speaking to strangers and then making the strangers a friend or a colleague or something you had common with, it's basic sales. But I found it substantially more rewarding than than just answering the phone. And the behaviors I learned in that crucible are still the behaviors that run my business today, and my team.
Yeah, I like that story. And for the BD kids that are out there, this was just a history lesson in business development and how it used to be in the old days. And those were the real business developers.
Yeah.
Hey, I made cold calls using a script with a landline as well. You just sound like a robot. The funny thing is that today we do have those robots. They can follow those scripts, and if anything, it's accelerating the drive toward business developers and human business developers, because so much now can be automated on both sides of the prospecting spectrum. Marketing is heavily automated now with artificial intelligence. The graphics, ads, and everything else it can create, it just does it in seconds, when you had to have a whole graphics team and art team and everything else to do it. And then on the flip side,
If you go on to like things like 11 Labs, where you can replicate your voice, and I can copy me as an avatar of myself with my voice. I almost don't need to be in the room. But here's the thing, Tony. I think that presents a challenge and an opportunity for BD and marketing people. It's one of my passions is that sales as a profession need to reclaim the high ground in the client relationship, in the client acquisition relationship. And salespeople, let's be straight here. Salespeople, generally speaking, are, I gotta hesitate to use the word, but lazy. If they think there's a better or quicker way of doing it, or someone else will do it, they'll get them to do it. And one of the issues with that is that, I'm not saying they don't work hard. I'm just thinking, hey, well, I can plug this in, it'll do it for me. One of the issues with that is that it's allowed marketing as a discipline to take over the lead acquisition, or the origination of the client acquisition process, to their detriment. The marketing tend to run the lead gen process, the qualification and early acquisition process, and BD, business developers, tend to be at the other end of the scale. Where they only want nice, fat, comfortable, warm, ready to buy leads. Hey, don't we all? But the problem with that is they've forgotten how to till the earth, how to actually grow their own crops, how to build their own business. And if you're a business developer, that's sort of your key. You should own that. I mean, that's where you should be.
Yeah. If you're lazy, you're going to get automated.
That's right. Absolutely. And that's, if you think about it, that's probably a good thing, right? It doesn't mean the client or the prospect will get good results from that automation, because automation is very good at selling itself, because it's super low cost and looks really, really good. And your business can lose a quarter of revenue simply by running on the space, trying to get up to speed, as opposed to going back to basics and focusing on what the real, the what I would call the core function of your business and your business development team are, or is.
Yeah. Well, and you'll like that I had in my book, the highlighted section, I have it open to right now, is the section where you write about why scripts don't work. And maybe it's because it makes you sound like a robot, not a human. And to your point, all of these advancements in technology, and just the way society is today, with short attention spans, it's this acceleration towards value-oriented engagement. That's what the humans on the other end aren't stupid. Your prospects are not stupid. Don't treat them that way. What they want to talk to a human, particularly in the prospecting phase. That's when they want to talk to you. They want valuable insights, and sometimes that means interrupting them.
Well, this is the look. I've hired and over the past 20 years, thousands of business developers, thousands of salespeople. And the attributes I'm looking for from what I would call a clean skin environment, a clean skin being someone with no experience, no expertise. What I'm looking for, and quite often they can be, the blank sheet can be a more attractive proposition than the veteran. Because they're malleable, I can train them, I can give them the skill set that will work for me and in our business. And this idea, the key thing, the number one thing I need them to have is an attitude. They need to have an attitude that, yeah, I can do this. I can run into that brick wall and then learn from that and move forward and then run into it in a slightly different way. The guys who don't have an attitude of, and I talk about the number one thing is, can you speak to strangers? Are you comfortable about getting out there and in a crowded room, going up to a group of 3 or 4 who are obviously in conversation, walking up and shaking their hand? How many trade shows have you been to where you can see all the salespeople standing around drinking coffee or lattes, talking to each other, and all the customers at the other side of the room all talking to each other, and both are afraid about engaging with each other? Our core function as business developers, as the catalyst in a business, we are the yeast that makes the bread. Okay, so we are the people that have to get out there, shake hands, knock on doors, pick up the telephone, and we're the beginning of that process. And the critical thing is that 98% of people in the sales profession don't understand that core principle, that speaking to strangers is where it's at. If you can't do that, and there's a lot of people in sales who don't like speaking to strangers, right? Which is like, you're going to have a hard life. You're going to find the next 20 years of your career really difficult if you don't like engaging and speaking with strangers.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about how people can make some bread with some of that BD yeast you've been talking about. So if we can, let's jump into your top 3 BD tactics from your book.
Well, if I put the number one principle, which is interrupting others, speaking to strangers, okay, that's almost like you'll crash and fail, but that is the first thing. The next thing I talked about briefly a moment ago is that attitudes, your attitude towards the problem and your prospect's attitude will change their behavior. Too many people in sales are going around trying to simply change their prospect's behavior or towards their product, but think first about changing their attitude as opposed to their behavior. Because once I change your attitude towards a particular topic, subject, potential solution, or my product or service, that in itself will sell it to the client or the prospect. That will change their behavior. So once we've done that, then so this is all simple stuff. Most of you guys should know these things already. I'm just trying to distill them into an understandable, digestible package. Yes lives in the land of no. I mean, we've all heard that before, is that if you're after a yes, it's surrounded by hundreds of no. Sales begin with the customer saying no, no, thank you. And look, no one likes rejection. I mean, it's what we do. The reason, let's imagine for a second that rejection didn't exist. Everybody said yes. Well, if that was the case, we wouldn't exist. I mean, the sales business development profession wouldn't need to be, we wouldn't have jobs. We wouldn't be here. The reason we exist is because of objections. It's because of prospects saying no, those initial no's, and understanding everything that flows from that. And the book goes into all these in great detail about how to understand the difference between initial objections versus actual objections, how to handle those, how to back to basics, distilling that into specific behaviors that you know in your head, and you don't need to go and research it suddenly when the customer says that first no, but most of them are lies. And then finally, the fourth principle, although you asked for 3, you always get 25% extra, is
Thank you for that bonus offer.
Is that consequences drive decisions. Okay, so, and what I mean by that is too often when we're presenting a solution or trying to grow a piece of business with a client, the client is thinking about, in the back of their head, they're thinking, what happens if I don't do this? What happens if I don't install this software, or if I don't buy the widget for my factory, or if I don't use this particular service in my business? And you know, if the answer they come up with is not much, because the salesperson is just promising, if you get this, you'll be taller and better looking and attract more of the opposite sex, to make it personal. Then they're going to say, but if you flip it, and this is the old sort of Revlon lipstick idea, that why people buy lipstick is because they won't be attractive, as opposed to being attractive if they don't do it. So we've got to have that in mind. It doesn't mean we need to tell our clients this, but we do need to understand what are the consequences for our prospect if they don't engage with us. And once we understand that, that will help you position your solution in a more effective manner, which will persuade the client to move closer towards you, because your competitors aren't doing this. So you do it, you close more sales.
Okay, got it. So let me review these real quickly. Tactic one is interrupt. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to interrupt. Tactic two is go for the no. That the yes lives in the land of no.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Tactic two is the attitude. And then yes lives in the land of no. That's tactic three.
Yeah.
And then we can address the bonus offer there that you gave us, the free fourth tactic, which is consequences. But if we can just unpack tactic one, talk about that a little bit more. When you say interruption selling, because that has there have been discussions about that. I think what's important is the pattern interrupt. It's the ability to push back. When the prospect says, "Oh, well, I'm pursuing this pathway." Oh, okay. It's the audacity to say, "Hey, that's fine. I've just worked with other clients in the past, and just to let you know, I'm just looking out for you. This is what we saw fail. This is how we succeeded. If you want to proceed with that pathway, that's great. That's your no. Okay." I always tell people business developers are like lifeguards. Okay. I'm here to save your life. That's my mentality. If you don't want to come with me, I'm not the cops. I can't force you. And that's my mission. I come from a position of giving. So is that what you mean by interruption, or is there a little bit more there?
Well, well, yes, and more. I think there's a lot more. I think that we need to be able to interrupt our prospects and our clients, not to the point where we're arguing with them, but that where we are, tapping them and saying, "Look, can you tell me a little bit more about how you came to this decision? Or walk me through, simple phrases like, walk me through why you," and it doesn't have to be related to the product or service you're offering. Okay. So one of the ways I like to interrupt, you talk about pattern interrupting, in terms of creating that brain space or that mental space where the prospect or the customer or the target doesn't know what's going to happen next. If you come across and present yourself as a standard cardboard cutout, templated salesperson, you're not going to create an impression that makes any sort of difference. So half our job is to interrupt the way we're remembered. So I was lucky that people remembered me in a different country because I had a different accent. Okay. I have people sitting next to me saying, I might try putting on an Irish accent when I'm on the phone, so it doesn't make any difference. But then I took that to another level. So when I was, say, for instance, presenting to a large audience, 500, 1,000 people or something like that, I needed to interrupt their pattern, particularly if I'm one of, say, 5 speakers, one after the other. How do I capture their attention? Because once I interrupt their mental process, it creates a gap of 10 to 15 seconds or a little bit more where I can plant an idea or a seed that will be retained. And what I would do, I'd bring chainsaws, axes. I brought an axe once to a sales meeting, I brought a door. I've done all sorts of crazy things. I brought I remember once I went to a board meeting, and I had 25 board members of this organization, and I was there to try and shake them up a little bit. And I collected $10 from each member of the board, their own cash out of their wallets. And I brought with me a paper shredder, and I started shredding their cash in front of them. Like literally their money was a pile of confetti under the table. And I hadn't said anything yet. And then I said, just stop me whenever you're uncomfortable with this. And then we got down about $30-$40 down. One guy said, whoa, stop. And then I positioned my idea, and I positioned it by saying, well, from my account, you guys seem to be like burning like $5,000 to $6,000 every day in terms of this waste. Why do you seem to be worried about $30 or $40? So all I was doing there was creatively interrupting or positioning an idea or a platform in which my idea would be accepted. Okay, I created that curiosity. And we can do the same thing within a sales environment, albeit that was, but whether it's one-on-one or one-to-many, is allow your creativity to burn, break things, cut things, tear things up, be remembered. I just one final anecdote on that front. I was pitching to a newspaper organization here in Sydney, and I was one of three sales trainers going into the room, and we're literally sitting outside the door, shoulder to shoulder, with our portfolios under our arm, ready to go in and tell them about how wonderful we are. And I knew that we all could do the job. We were all good at what we did. What I needed to be was remembered when we're all out of the room and the panel are saying, okay, so what did you think of this? I needed to be the guy who said, what about that crazy Irish guy? If I did that, if I was remembered, I had an advantage over everyone else. So I went into the room, and I actually climbed up onto the boardroom table and lay down like horizontal in front of them and began the first 4 minutes of my presentation lying down, looking at the ceiling. The same presentation, just talking about. But I suppose the point I'm trying to illustrate here is by being different and interrupting their thinking patterns, okay, then we create a position or an environment where our message can be received. And we're professionals in this. We need to be good at doing these things, not being standard cookie cutter, the same as everyone else. Find and make something that's different. And by the way, it's also a lot more fun, right? You have a lot more fun doing that. Whether you win or lose, you enjoy doing what you do, which is a big driver.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to get to. I'm sure you had tons of laughs from around the table when you laid down on the table or when you started shredding cash and they told you to stop. Okay, $30, that's enough. And just having fun with it. You're creative. Granted, these are extreme scenarios that I was trying hard not to laugh out loud just so that the audio could pick up on the podcast. So I was really restraining a lot there, but those are extreme examples, but I think they help bring home, particularly the people who may be shy, who may be introverted, who are, just they're very concerned about stepping outside the line. Have fun with it. Have fun. Be memorable. Okay, so be creative.
Sorry, Tony, you'll find that
you're interrupting me, Ciaran.
This idea is that if you're not doing these things face to face, perhaps your business or you work over the phone or video chat or whatever, you can use things like noise and pens and things like that. Right, to create that's a visual interruption. Just by little things can make, wow, that's memorable. You can sort of duck off screen and come back in. You can put, if you're just on the phone, you can use sound effects. There's a myriad of things that you can use to great effect, with the purpose and the hope that all of these purposes, just creating that space where the prospect is thinking, oh, this is different. This guy is different. I need to pay attention to what comes next. And that's when you can position your idea.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, I'll share one that is much more subdued, but it works. Is I do what I call co-pilot cold calls.
Yeah.
Co-pilot cold calls. You do a call with two people on the call. So when the prospect answers, it's a complete pattern in it because they always get calls from a single individual. But
Yeah.
when you call in with two, I don't know what it is. I think they think they missed a conference call or something they were supposed to be on. Like, did I miss a meeting? Why?
Yeah.
And it also sends a signal of value to them. Oh, there are two people calling me. And we're all on kind of this impromptu ad hoc cold call. So for some reason, those co-pilot cold calls are a complete pattern interrupt because nobody expects it, and they work. So
I love it. And next thing you can extend that, and you could have 15 people making one call to one prospect. You go, what? Hang on, you've got a whole soccer team here calling me? What?
Right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, have fun with it. Be creative, of course. Be respectful of the environment that you're in and who you're calling on. Knowing them, you have to know their vibe as well. So, okay, so that covers the it really colorfully colors in on what you mean by interruption selling. Um, and then the attitude, just a little bit there. I think what you're saying is kind of as you dramatized, whether it's, shredding cash right in front of folks, that is attitude. And it shows that there's a certain amount of no fear. You're sending the signal of, look, I don't have any fear. Okay.
Well,
I'm here to
you're,
engage with you.
you're going to get, look, we're in the rejection business, right? That's
Hmm.
what we do for a living. So uh, if you have look, rejections are real. No one really likes being rejected. The old idea of like, if you're going to push out 120 cold dials each and every day, you're going to be kicked in the head 90+% of the time. Now, the trick is going to be about how do you enjoy the journey as well as the destination? Are you learning from each call that you make, each connect that you're trying to establish? Are you do you have a pattern, or do you have a methodology in which where you can capture that behavior and improve each and every day? And if you can, then it becomes a learning exercise. And you need to have this sort of, our inner voice. Timothy Galloway wrote about the inner game of tennis a long time ago, and it became 15 different variants of that book. But this is the idea of our own mental coach, that when all things are equal, we're all the same. We've got the same talent and ability. The one thing that'll make a difference to you as a professional is your inner coach, is your ability to have a conversation with yourself in the call and say, try this, do that, and step in and step out of that. So this idea of attitude of, you know what, we all learn by failing, really not from success. So fail often and learn. Absolutely, yeah, key.
Yeah, fail fast for speedy success. And
Yeah,
then, when you said consequences, your bonus offer there, that tactic number 4, the consequences,
yeah,
I think that comes down, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's this idea that, okay, you got the objection, you're responding to it, but at the end of the day, you're trying to get the prospect to understand what are your consequences of
yeah,
inaction. Often it's inaction, right? Because no action to them seems a lot safer than
yeah.
taking whatever action it is that you're advocating for. And so, how are you teasing that out of the prospect, getting them to understand the consequences?
Yeah, look, there are two key drivers that will drive a consequence sort of motivated movement forward. And in any prospect, they're driven by two things. There's the what I would call the objective, which is the role. So if you think about a typical business card of any particular person, it's like John Smith, marketing director, company X. Well, John Smith, the marketing director of a particular organization, is driven by a set of objective behaviors that his role or her role objectively have to achieve. So think about an advert or an advertisement for their job. It would have specific KPIs: grow the market by X%, increase product distribution by a particular number. It'd be numerically driven over a period of time. So they're objective targets that that person has, irrespective of the role that they're in. So that's their job. They're driven. But if John Smith like quit the job and was let's say Mary Jones was hired into that role. Mary comes from a completely different background. She has the same objective criteria around the KPIs in the job, but she has a totally different set of subjective criteria. Okay, so she may approach problems she may come from, say, a retail background as opposed to an engineering background. She may have, at home, she may have 3 young kids. John didn't have any children. They could have different likes and dislikes. They have a totally different subjective way of looking at the world. And as salespeople, we're pitching what I would call the binary or the logical objective things about their job, as opposed to missing out on the key drivers which make influence all decisions. Most of the decisions we make in our lives will be made subjectively or emotionally by what we like and prefer, and then justified logically by the criteria. So we'll retrofit it in to suit ourselves. A good example, and I talk about this in the book, is if you imagine there are 2 cars sitting at a set of traffic lights. One of them is a brand new S-Class Mercedes, probably $150,000 plus. The car next to it is a cheap sort of Kia import that it costs maybe $15,000. Now there's a 10x price difference between the two, but both cars objectively do exactly the same thing. They can only drive at the same speed limit. They both have air conditioning, power steering, 4 wheels, various safety things within them. But one prospect decided to spend 10 times more than the other one. And they will justify that, through various tax perks or the reason why they need it for their job, etc. Most people won't say the reason I need the 10x price on that car is because it makes me look good. I feel good when I'm driving it. They won't use that, although that is the main driver. So when I talk about consequences driving decisions, I'm really referring to not only understanding those objective consequences for the business and the KPIs for that individual, but what are the consequences driving the individual? Why do they get up in the morning and do this job? Why are they interested in this particular subject, etc.? Now, it's a more difficult area to explore in a sales environment because it can appear to be, well, hang on, that's my information. Why do you want to know this? And so we have to be very subtle about the discovery process when we're engaging with our prospects and there has to be a certain amount of trust involved from the prospect and for them to share that information with you. And in which case, then when they do trust you, you've got to be honest about what you're presenting back. It has to be a genuine solution for them in a 3-dimensional way.
Yeah, trust is the bedrock of all business development.
Yeah.
Well, Ciaran, let me just summarize the tactics really quickly for the folks that are listening. Tactic number 1, interrupt. Don't be afraid to interrupt. It's that pattern interrupt that will have your prospects thinking after they've talked to a lot of other providers, hey, that one was different. I really remembered them. They made me laugh. They surprised me. And so that rolls right into tactic 2. Learn about those interruptions. Have that attitude of understanding that you need resilience in this role. And a big part of that is approaching it from a learning mindset. You're out there delivering value to prospects all day long. Be proud in the fact that you're helping them. And when they push back, that's good. But and that's how you learn. Maybe there's a no and that's a definite no. Okay, but you learn something in that process. And that rolls right into tactic number 3, which is, yes lives in the land of no, as you said. And it's understanding how to be able to respond and be able to work through those no's with your prospect so that they could eventually understand what the consequences, tactic number 4, what the consequences are of not working with you. And those consequences are directly tied not only to their extrinsic requirements that are published, every other competitor probably knows about them. It's those deep intrinsic requirements that really move the needle. And oftentimes your competitors never even know about. And those are the foundations for building that trust that leads to business development success. Well, Ciaran, it's been so fun talking to you. Like I said, I had to really hold back on a lot of those belly chuckles that I had building up, but this has been a lot of fun. Again, I really enjoyed your book. Folks, it's Interruption Selling. Ciaran McGuigan's book is on Amazon. We'll have it in the show notes. Ciaran, how can folks get a hold of you and follow your work?
Well, look, I'm all my contact details are in the book. Okay. They can find me. They can just go to Strikeforce Sales, which is my lead gen business development business, strikeforcesales.com.au, which is the Australian.au. All my contact details are there. I'm quite open. I'm happy to speak to strangers all the time. I'm the guy who stops at bus stops, or I'm sitting on the train, and you're thinking, okay, right, maybe I sat in the wrong chair. If you, God help you if you're on a plane with me on a long haul flight. Now we're going to be either best friends or worst enemies at the end of that thing. But so you just Google my name with the weird spelling, of course, here at the bottom of the screen. If you just Google it, you'll find me on LinkedIn and anywhere else.
Well, Ciaran, I'm so glad you took this 42-minute flight with us today, because it was so fun listening to you talk about your stories and talking about your book, Interruption Selling. Folks, grab a copy of the book. It's fantastic. It's a fun read. It's a quick read, very clear, very concise, and a lot of great information in there about how you can really move the needle with your business growth. So, Ciaran McGuigan, love to have you again sometime on the show.
I'd love to,
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ciaran.
Thank you very much, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Same here. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Business Development Podcast. Join our free community of corporate partners and business development professionals advancing the art, science, and ethics of the business development profession at gbdassociation.org.